I am so excited to have you join me today for our parenting workshop. People probably keep filtering in, which is wonderful because the knowledge that we're going to have in the next hour is open for all of us to take home and put it to use immediately. So anyone that wants to join us is going to be blessed. My name is Dr. Gretchen Gendro, and I am so excited that Mr. Mattson and Pastor Jason were willing to collaborate on this project because really the benefit is for anyone that will listen. So, like I said, the knowledge is available. I'm a doctor of counseling psychology. I have my license in Washington State. So one of the things that I noticed through going through not just training, but in the clinical setting, so much material is really valuable, but I noticed that it's really only accessible for a couple people. The people who like reading research articles, not very many, and then the people that pay a lot of money to go to therapy. They have access to the same information. And so it's always been on my heart to put projects together like this, where I take research data and I put it together in a way that hopefully makes sense to the audience. We use a couple different graphs and ways of depicting what the research articles have been talking about, and then you get the knowledge. And like I have said earlier today, it's kind of like you're learning some tools and ways of addressing situations, and today's going to be on parenting. So thanks for being here. Okay, so the parenting styles that we are going to talk about today, I'm going to list out, and we're going to go over them in depth. So we have four main ones: authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, indulgent, and neglectful and involved. I put up at the top, this is fancy research people like to know. This isn't me just making this up. So just a few names of the people that have done the research way before I'm presenting it. So all the way from 1960s, it's been improved upon over all the years. And so now, a recent article posted, actually very recently, 2016 is even old compared to some of the articles recently. But what's neat is to see that not only is this information made available, but it's being built on so that people like me, who I mentioned earlier, if you weren't here, my husband and I are married, 27 years, we have 5 kids. I need access to parenting information. None of us were born knowing exactly what we're doing. And so for me to be able to find some of this after having kids was really helpful. So these are the 4 main parenting styles. If you have your worksheet, if you're like me, I'm a worksheet person. I like taking notes. So if you don't have one, Mr. Mattson maybe can help you find one. But so our worksheet is going to have this axis. We've got the y-axis and the x-axis. And that's, again, my way for the brain to understand kind of which category I'm talking about. But we're going to talk about the axis that's the x-axis first. That's the one that goes side to side. And on this axis, we're talking about what's known as parental responsiveness. And on your worksheet, you're going to notice it's kind of this scale of warmth. So people will put it into terms of like, this is warm parenting, and over here is cold parenting. So as you can see, we'll kind of read this together. This is not on your worksheet, but this is a category on the left side of your x-axis. And the x means this is where we're going to try to aim for as parents. This is where we have words, tone, demeanor, and behaviors that reflect warmth and acceptance to our kids. Well, it sounds easy because we want to always be encouraging and nice and, say all these sweet things. But what happens when they're being really naughty? How are we going to approach that? How do we deal with situations when they're going this way and we want them to go that way? We need to know how to approach a situation using kindness, but also messages of support that are intentionally articulated. This doesn't happen by accident. So I think, for example, the times that I'm really tired and I don't want to have a conversation with one of my teenage girls, but I want to show that intentionality and that warmth by being open to their conversation. That shows acceptance. I'm interested in what's going on in your life. Do I really care about the drama that's happening over at dance with other teenage girls? Not really, but I'm going to show that intentionality by purposely being willing to engage in conversations that I'm kind of going to put me to sleep, really. But it's also in an authentic way, because why do I listen? Because I really care about her. I genuinely care about what's going on in her life. So it's encouraging individuality. That's another thing that I just want to clear the air right here, especially in the space that we're at. Like, God made our kids individual people. They're not supposed to be little cookie cutters of us. They're not out to represent us. I mean, none of us would want that expectation from our parents to be cookie cutters of them. So as we're raising our kids, we want to foster individuality. That means maybe their fashion is not at all what I would want. I'm glad none of my kids are out here, but we've gone through some weird fashions. Sometimes their little, like, their hairs are like hanging down and I kind of want to like move them out of their face, but that's fashionable in this age range right now. Also, I had boys that, they grew their hair out and it was so crazy looking. But I closed my mouth because I wanted to foster the individuality instead of criticizing who they wanted to be. So it says self-regulation of the child. Self-regulation is just fancy talk for a child being able to say, I'm uncomfortable with this situation, but I know that my parent is there to help me stay calm, knowing that they approve of me, even if I feel uneasy of myself and unsure of myself. So let's go real quick to this side, the x-axis way over here. This is where we don't want to hang out, but unfortunately, we tend to gravitate to this area on our bad days, when we're tired, when we've got a lot of stress. We can have words, tones, demeanor, and behaviors that reflect harshness. I don't have time for this. I don't want to hear this anymore. Stop your crying. Knock it off. Be a grown-up, or be a big kid. We show rejection, but like, I just can't even deal with this right now. You're so annoying, or you're just getting on my nerves. There's disapproval of the person, not the behavior. What are you thinking? Who would even do that kind of thing? Like, that kind of tone is just harsh. We share messages of criticism, not correction. So those really are mutually exclusive, but criticism is telling that person, I don't approve of you, you are wrong, instead of correction is saying, well, I approve of you, and that behavior, well, it wasn't the best choice, so let's talk about what could have been a better choice next time. Also, this is, again, low individuality and high parental control. That means you represent me. You need to dress this way, act this way, listen to this type of music, meet these standards, because I need you to, it's weird because we would never say this, but we want our kids to be this perfect specimen, like they're in a little science lab, and we're creating this ideal. Well, let's just get rid of that idea, because really that's in contrast to God's way. And God loves our kids. He created them individually, so they're allowed to express themselves a little crazy sometimes. Okay, that's our x-axis on your parental diagram here. Okay, the next one, the y-axis, this one's so interesting. So researchers term this parental demandingness. Not a word we usually use, but it will make sense. So this is where we are showing, especially as, solid, strong, confident parents, we have expectations, and those are good things. We have goals, rules, and expectations that aim to socialize our children. That means we have social norms. There are rules in society, and as your parent, I'm going to help you learn what those rules are and coach you. We want to teach them to abide by social rules and family rules as well, cultural norms. This is what we do in this family. These are standards parents set, and they expect their children to set. Expect their children to follow. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute, because I might step on some toes. Actually, it's probably a good time to do that now. But let's look at the goal really quick. Our efforts to discipline children by supervising and setting clear boundaries and expectations of behavior. That sounds easy, right? Except we should live by the same standard. I've talked to audiences before that got a little confused when I said set high expectations. That's a good thing, except they're like, I demand the room to be clean. And I really want to encourage people to set the expectation that has to do with more of the character expectations. Do you have a character expectation in your family, for example, of integrity? Do you want your kids to tell the truth? Again, I think we're all going to just say, well, yeah, but let me step on some toes, maybe mine for starters. When I want my kids to have integrity, am I willing to also have integrity? Like, for example, I can't call in sick if I'm not really sick. Or if somebody wants to talk to me and the phone rings, I can't say, tell them I'm not here. That's not true, is it? And so we actually have to notice, when are we expecting our kids to meet a certain standard, but we're not willing to meet it ourselves? I think about also texting and driving. Don't do this. I'm just trying to get back to this person really quick. Also, some standards of integrity would include being the same person in private as you are in public. Are you the same person? Or does the outside of the world, do they know who you are on one way, and then when you go home, maybe you have a temper, maybe you say things that you would never say if your pastor showed up or somebody from Bible study. How about keeping your word? I set a standard to keep my word in my house, but you know what? That is hard. So when I give my child my word that I'm going to do something for them, I can think of 100 examples. When they hold me accountable and they say, Mom, you said that you would do this. I can think of an example when my daughter wanted to go to gymnastics, for example. She needed to go to tryouts. And I was like, yeah, I'll get you signed up for tryouts. I'll get you signed up. Well, I forgot. Was I really forgetful, or was it secretly that I was like, gymnastics, it's not that big of a deal. She's not really that into it. And then she goes, Mom, tryouts are next week. And did you sign me up? And I think the tryouts were the next day. So I had zero time. She goes, did you sign me up? I was like, oh, I forgot, maybe next year. And she looks at me and she said, but you gave me your word. And she even said, I feel disappointed because you told me you'd sign me up and you didn't. And I'm telling you, I got on the phone and I called gymnastics and I was like, is there any chance that she can get into the auditions or the tryouts because I messed up? And I had to own that. So if we're going to establish these high standards, let's keep our word when we want our kids to keep their word. The Bible tells us to let our yes be yes and our no be no. And I think it's really easy for us to quickly say, yeah, I'll be there, I'll do it, but secretly mean no. If you don't mean to say yes, then don't say yes. Say, you know what, that's really not going to work out for me, or I can't make it in my schedule, or that doesn't fit my ethical principles. But I can't say yes and secretly mean no, and I can't say no to something but secretly want to say yes. So our kids pick up on that. A couple more, then I'll be done stepping on toes. But hey, I'm right there with everybody, right? So I think one of the other things I notice is we want a character trait of kindness. But when do we tell our kids to be kind to the kids at school, and then I'm like talking about this other person and my kid sees me gossiping? That's not modeling what we need to do. So I'm pausing on expectations because I'm all for high expectations, but the hard work is that I have to meet those too. The other couple was respecting authority. Of course, I want my kids to say yes, ma'am, no, sir, whatever, in authority situations, but when do I not want to follow the rules? And I know this is none of you guys here, but I was in the parking lot recently when there's cones and signs and arrows, and I'm in line like all these other people, and somebody just pulled right up and wove through the cones and pushed themselves right to the front of the line, and I was like, it's small. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a moral issue, or is it? Because if we don't want to follow the rules, how can we expect our kids to also follow the rules? So we set high expectations. We live by them. Our behavior must match our values. Hard one because work ethic is a family value for us. So when we don't want to do the yard work, my husband and I still have to get up and do it. And we still have to get up on time to get to work. We also set goals for our family. So some examples. We set goals and then we work towards them and we support each other as people are meeting those goals in our family. We talk about persevering through hard things versus procrastinating. So if we tell our kids we want them to get a job done, this comes up in literature a lot. When kids see a disconnect, they can totally pick up on when you say one thing but you do another. And some researchers actually even call it like a chronic trauma to have a mismatch, like the values don't match behind closed doors. That's pretty severe sounding. So we'll keep it light, but they pick up on it. So if kids are getting in trouble for not finishing their work on time, but then you're also procrastinating on a project that might be important for them or for the family, maybe they can't articulate that, but that doesn't compute. That doesn't make sense. I've had people that I've watched will also get in big trouble for not being clean, but then the parents also make excuses and exceptions. So let's all agree, and we'll move on, that we're going to set our high standard for our kids, but we're also willing to do that hard work to model that. Down here on this axis of demandingness, down here, there's no expectation. So you don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable in this house. If you feel like doing it, do it. And if you don't feel like doing it, that's okay. Because we have little or no supervision, we're going to lack discipline because there's really, per society norms, but our rules, those rules don't apply to us in this house. We do things differently here. And the danger here is that friendship and feelings, I want you to like me, I want you to not be mad at me, I want you to feel all snugly around me. Let's just throw out the rules because I'd rather that you approve of me. And the friendship and feelings are prioritized over the standards and the expectations. So a little ouchie on both of those. I hope that we'll have a chance to ask some questions because I don't want people to think that that means there's, with the character stuff, focus on that, but we still have expectations for keeping the house clean. We still have expectations for doing chores. We have a lot of expectations about, in our house, we have our own set of family rules, like earning money and spending money. And so get an agreement with your husband, your wife. If you're a single parent, just have your own set of standards, whether it's like we work hard and earn a lot of money, we save it. Then that's great. Maybe it's you spend some, you tithe, you save it. Whatever it is with your family's situation, you need to decide and then maintain that standard when it comes to teaching what you want your kids to do. You have to just follow through. Okay, I think I've moved on with that, but here's why it gets to be exciting, because now it starts to make sense. For me, I'm a visual learner. I love it when things start to make sense. So on this slide, notice what we said about the high demanding. We have high expectations here. We also are very warm and accepting in this house. And if you notice that this quadrant at the top left is the authoritative parenting. That's our aim. We're going to go for that one. I'll tell you why, because there's a lot of outcome data that shows this type of parenting is going to have a lot of really good results. One sec. We see all over here, in fact, I love explaining this in lots of detail because I just love this concept. In the top right, we see a super high demanding family. We have rules here. There's no exception. No mistakes allowed. Lots of punitive harshness because over here it's cold and unaccepting. So you see this happen with families that are very rules focused. We might call it legalistic, even with biblical principles like it's this or you're just in big trouble. And I'll explain why that's really not healthy and why kids in the top right, they end up not developing healthy relationships because they're really not accepted for who they are. If they get out of line a little bit, they get harsh punishment. On the bottom left here, permissive parenting, we also call it indulgent parenting. That's why I was thinking if you wanted to write these names up on your own graph, the top left, authoritative, authoritarian. Down below is indulgent or permissive. But if you think about it, we'll explain it a little bit more on the next slide. Permissive parenting is also not a great idea because these are the ones where we're just best friends and there's just no expectation on you. So I just love you so much. You're just so amazing. It's all about acceptance, but it's no rules, nothing else. That's not helpful. And then this bottom right one, we're going to see some very, very negative things. The most juvenile delinquency comes from this bottom right, neglectful parenting. It actually shows up two different ways. One is, I don't even care because I'm not even interested in who you are. And the other way of framing it is, how could you even say I don't love you? I provide a roof over your head, food on the table, I do all this stuff for you, but I'm cold and harsh, and I don't really care what you do with your life because it's too much work for me. Okay, so a little more explanation on these quadrants. Let's see. I wrote notes to myself about when I've done this very wrong, and it caused problems, but God totally restores relationships when we make changes. So here we go. Authoritative, take a look at the graph here. Okay. High expectations, clear standards. I want to point out, too, that when we have high expectations with little kids, we really shouldn't get into the debate of why, because little children don't have the prefrontal cortex that understands the logic of why you're telling me that I can't play in the street or why I can't have Costco cake for my dinner tonight. It's just sometimes with little kids, there's a rule and I can't explain to you. Other times we need an explanation, but I want to encourage anyone with teenagers, they need rationale. They want to know why. So if you want to tell them, I have an expectation that you're home by 10, and the reason is because I want to make sure you're safe, because I have a really big day tomorrow and I have to get some sleep. We put the dog away and it's a quiet house. There's a reason why I have your curfew set. It's not because I'm trying to control you, but there's a reason for it. So when you set your clear expectations with your teenager, let them have a little rationale. It probably makes sense to you, and it will really diminish this rebellion, like, you're trying to control me, I can do what I want, if you have a good reason for it. So I like to say that to my kids just to let them know. You are assertive, you're democratic, you're flexible though. I'm open to seeing your side of a situation, and I'm very responsive and warm. Authoritarian though, we're gonna see a complete difference. So they're high expectations and clear rules, but it's forceful, it's autocratic, very rigid, punishment, punitive, and limited warmth. Now, again, with little kids, sometimes because I said so, it's time for bed. But as kids get older, it really will soften the relationship when you go to the warmth side and say, I understand that this is where you're coming from, and this is why I made this rule. On the permissive side, this is whatever you want. So I've kind of already said this, but I like that it's kind of broken down. These are low expectations, few rules, indulgent, very accepting, but very lenient. Ooh, you guys see this one? I don't know if you can see that far away. Avoids confrontation. Confrontation's icky, so you can just do what you want because it's too hard for me to confront you. Confrontation is not ugly, and it's also a skill that we can learn in case you didn't grow up learning how to have healthy confrontation. It doesn't have to be messy, but it's good to learn because it will happen that you have conflict, and you can gently confront people because you love them. So while it's warm, it also avoids any kind of confrontation, so we're just going to let you have whatever you want. You might throw a fit, and I don't want to deal with that right now. In fact, I do have a couple stories. I've worked with really high-risk adolescents, lots of very, very stressful things that they're dealing with and lots of things that they're doing to themselves that's very unhealthy, physically, emotionally, just very, very messy. But one of the things that unfortunately I could see some patterns was that they were really good at throwing fits and really good at getting what they wanted, and it just got worse and worse. As they became teenagers, the threats got harder and worse and more scary for the parents. So instead of being able to hear no when they were smaller, they heard yes so much that when they started to hear no from other people, they did not like it. They felt rejected, they felt unloved. It just went swinging all the way to the other side. So I do kind of point out, it's okay to tell your kids no because we have boundaries and we have expectations, and that's not going to be something that we're going to agree to. Okay, the last category down here kind of mentioned no expectations, few rules, absent. My husband had a friend whose parents were so busy with their work, like they owned a business. He was able to leave the house in the morning, come home whenever, go out with whoever, eat whatever, spend whatever, have whoever over, because the parents were too busy running their business. Passive is also just like not going to put up a fight with you because it's not even worth it. Neglectful, uninterested, competing priorities. Okay. I was going to tell a story, too. I learned my lesson the hard way a couple times. But these two came to me when I spent most of my time in the authoritarian parenting when I was a younger mom with lots of little kids. And to be honest, there's a lot of chaos with a lot of little kids, so sometimes you just have to be very, very orderly and very direct and very firm. But it would carry into places I could have loosened up a little bit. So I was too far on the cold, could have moved a little bit towards the warm. One of them, we moved into a new house, and I had an absolutely no food anywhere but the kitchen rule. And one of my sons would make himself a humongous plate of spaghetti and secretly sneak it up to his room because he was starving. And I lost my mind when I was like, you have spaghetti sauce up here. But I realized the poor kid, wouldn't that have been a little bit easier on our relationship? Because we had a bit of a choppy relationship all the way through junior and senior year of high school. I think it would have meant a lot to him if I was like, man, you look hungry. Can I make you some food? Can I hang out with you? Maybe he wouldn't want me to hang out with him. But at least, hey, you look like maybe you're hungry. Can I get you some food? Instead, he was trying to hurry up, make himself a plate of food, and disappear. And then I caught him, and now I got all this tension, and you're disrespecting me, and you disrespect my house. I mean, can you feel like that got ugly? It didn't have to, though, huh? The other one I kind of thought was funny when I was doing this was I was pretty cold and harsh about a lot of disciplining because it's my rules, it's my house, this isn't your house. And one of my kids would go into the pantry and pull out a box of muffin mix and make an entire box of muffin mix, like 12 muffins for himself, and eat all of them and like leave none for anyone else. I used to get on his case all the time. I'm like, that's rude, you shouldn't eat all this food, it's not your food, and all this stuff. And the reason I think it's ugly is because the Holy Spirit convicted me one day when I was walking down an aisle and I saw a box of muffin mix, and I realized my kid was going through some really, really hard things. And he was, dealing with relationships and dealing with school and dealing with grades. Do you think a box of muffin mix really matters in the context of all the stuff that he was actually dealing with? So I feel like I just want to make sure that I stay grounded in the fact that some of these things are minors and some of them are majors, but I was getting wrapped around the axle about things that were not a big deal. So I think that I put some pressure on the relationship, but the nice thing is we can repair relationships as well. And they're really, really good kids, and they love me, and I love them, but I think that I had to really have a heart-to-heart with myself and realize, being in that authoritarian space and being really cold isn't really going to nurture that and foster that relationship that I wanted. Because then, they're like, they don't want to hang out with you, and you're like, why don't you want to hang out with me? So with the authoritative style, this is what's so cool. So I'm going to tell you why we're going to do this model, and so as you go forward, you're going to think, high demand, but warm and accepting. High expectations, but lots of encouragement. Not going to let you quit and give up. You got this, but I'm going to stay here with you because I know you have what it takes. That's the authoritative parenting place. So those kids are socially responsible. They have high self-esteem, high confidence, and they're achievement-oriented. I was going to look up some of the other research here that I brought. I mean, isn't that kind of the goal, right? All that stuff that's listed out there is like, wait, how does that even match? How can that make sense? But children of authoritative parents perform better in school and exhibit fewer behavior problems, better pro-social skills than other children. Pro-social skills are when they purposely go out in a positive social way, like they invite kids over, they go sit with the lonely kid, they are polite in class, they take turns, all of those little kinds of behaviors, they have a lot more skills. These children are usually very self-reliant. Why do you think that is? What do you think the kids in this category are more self-reliant? What was the answer? They have the self-esteem to decide what Yes, because they feel comfortable taking risks because it's not about grades, for example. It's about my effort. And so if I try hard, and that develops self-confidence, and there's a neat momentum that happens when kids try new stuff and like, oh, I just did that. I'm going to try more things. And they develop their own inner confidence. Yeah, they're self-reliant too because nobody's doing everything for them. I have another story. My oldest is 22. He got married this year. And one of the things that we laughed about was, as a mom of 5, I was not making people's lunches. I'm not organizing your clothes. I'm not able to put your backpack together. You got to figure that out. I've got other people I'm taking care of. And so he went through this season where he was pretty irritated because I wouldn't help him with everything. Like, you never help me out. He didn't actually say that, but he would grumble that I would be like, if you want some food, here's the kitchen. You're allowed to make food, and then you have to clean up after yourself if you want to be in the kitchen, right? That was one of my expectations. So when he went through all of his high school years, he did everything for himself. Is it because I'm not doing that for you? You got to figure that out. Well, no. It's like, listen, I'm here to help you. He needed to sign up for driver's ed. I don't know how to do that. Let's figure this out together. But when he left the house, he was the only guy in his dorm, in their little suite, that knew how to cook, clean, do his own homework on time, and go to school on time. And in college, it's just my own philosophy that I shouldn't send a kid out the door with no life skills so they have to figure all that out and do well in school. Yeah. So he did his own laundry, and he made his own appointments. He did all these things because The expectation of like, well, I could show you how to do this, but I won't do it for you. When we look at the undemanding, permissive parent, they're the ones running around doing everything for their child because they love them. I got this. I'm going to make you your favorite meal, whatever. But the child doesn't leave the house being self-reliant and feeling confident that they can go and take on new challenges because I already learned that, so now I can go and focus on the harder things. Right? Does that make sense? You guys have kids that head off to college, right? And now you're like, they're able to handle things. It's so sad. In my clinical work, I see so many kids that have anxiety. They have anxiety about everything. But wouldn't it be nice if they gained these confidence skills? The competence leads to confidence. But they gain these competencies when they're younger because of the standard, because authoritative parents are saying, I'm not doing that for you today. Nope. I will help you figure it out, but I'm not doing it for you. So anyway, my son left for college, and he's like, what is it with these guys? They don't even know how to do dishes. I was like, I actually said, I don't know, what do you think it is? He goes, I think they had parents that did everything for them. And I was like, oh, he used to be so irritated that I wouldn't do everything. So they're self-reliant, it does work out. Self-reliant and independent as well as self-motivated. And that's another thing. I keep grabbing from different bits of research. You know that, why are they more self-motivated? Kids from authoritative parenting styles. Like intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is like, I'm going to achieve this because I feel good about myself. I want to do well in school because it makes me feel better about me. Not I get A's, but I get knowledge and I feel good. And so I develop my own motivation. For example, if you want somebody to like go exercise or something, if they're kind of just negatively, associating exercise with if I don't, I get in trouble, so I have to do it, it takes away their own motivation. Or if they get rewarded, that's another thing. Parents can over-reward, and that takes away the intrinsic motivation to do a good job. So whether it's hard work in school or hard work taking care of your bills, paying your bills, it's just that feeling of good. I feel good when I take care of my own stuff. So we don't want to diminish that by rewarding behaviors. I was trying to think of another example. I think it's good for kids to get paid for doing extra work, but they don't get paid to do the regular housework at our house because we're a family. So we all work hard and we're part of a family. Dad goes to work, mom works, makes sure that you get dropped off and picked up when you need. So you do your job too, you do your part. And so I think that also adds to that self-motivation because they know that they're part of something. So it feels good. So we have the three other categories of parenting. I'm just going to go over with the authoritarian. Here are the outcomes. I didn't make this up. I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable, but the kids over here with the authoritarian parents, they have lower self-esteem. Anyone want to guess why? I can't do anything right. Doesn't matter how hard I try. I can't do it right. I get in trouble no matter what. Poor academics. Poor academic achievement, that's all together. Poor responsibility, poor social skills, irritable, aggressive, highly dependent. So interesting. But look at this. The research says that they tend to be dependent on their parents. I wonder why. Anyone have a guess? So if I make sure, yep, exactly, Tracy. Sorry, for those in the live stream, the answer was, I don't know how to do anything right. And if I don't know how to do anything right, then I'll just rely on you to do it for me. And I've watched parents control. You know what, just forget it, I'll do it for you. You don't do it right, you don't cook right, you didn't clean up the kitchen right, you didn't wash the car right. None of this was done right. And that's constant criticism and that demeaning feeling that I can't do anything right unintentionally turns a person totally dependent on someone else because they lack the ability and the confidence to say, well, I may not do this well, but at least I'll figure it out. They also tend to be withdrawn, less sociable, and vulnerable to stress and depression. Yeah. Those are the kids I feel like they have to walk on eggshells. You know, like one false move and they're going to get yelled at. No, not allowed to be a human. No emotions here. You're being a crybaby. Knock it off. You shouldn't feel sad. So these kids, I see them in clinic a lot because there's literally no grace. I wrote that on your worksheet down here. In fact, that's kind of where I'm also headed. These are the attributes down below. This is what we're going to aim for. But think about it. Either there's an impossible standard, so there's no grace. I can never make it. Or there's no expectation on the, I guess, down here. So at the bottom, I just kind of put all of the thoughts together. So anyway, with the authoritarian parent, there's high expectations, and there's just no grace. With all that criticism, I think most of us would back away from even trying. And then, last slide. Same slide down here, the indulgent and permissive parenting. This one was kind of, my mind was blown when I realized these kids, they're immature. Why do you think they're immature? And frustrated, low achievement, egocentric, self-centered. But I did everything for you. But I showed you so much love. You should feel happy because I showed you all this love. Why are these kids immature, frustrated, they have low achievement, egocentric, self-centered, poor social skills, impulsive, feelings-driven, and low independence? Okay, any thoughts? How does that make sense? See if you can use the axis to explain. Yeah?
I would say that since they never had any challenges, any set rules, anything to push them to improve themselves, they're immature. They don't have
Yes.
game plan.
Yes, because they were never held to a higher standard. I'm paraphrasing because I forget the microphone doesn't pick up what you just said. But yeah, there's no standard. So the world has revolved around them and their emotions. And if you think about it, really a child's brain, like if everything I do is wonderful and I don't have to get up on time, I don't have to be on time, I don't have to finish the group project that we all work together on, I don't have to do my part. Oh, you're so sweet. Okay. Why egocentric? Because the world revolves around me. It's all about me. And really my parents have fostered that, so you're the one that has the problem, obviously, because mom and dad think I'm amazing. And I just don't even have the ability to see outside of myself and go, I can be a real jerk, because when I don't get my way, I have a fit. I'm self-centered because it's all been lovey and perfect, but no expectations. So obviously, you guys are the ones with the problem. Impulse, desires, and feelings driven. I know, when we think about the biblical applications of stuff, God gave us feelings, and we're supposed to obviously have feelings. And in therapy, it's so interesting. I see people either worship their feelings, and that everything about life is only feelings driven, or they're on this side of the extreme where it's like, no feelings. We're robots. We don't have sadness. We don't have anger. We don't have any feelings. They're not allowed here, only the good ones. So I try to integrate that feelings are the way, God created us with the ability to feel so we can have empathy for others, but we can't rule our life based on feelings. And this kid down here, if they want to have a fit, it's okay. Let's make sure that you feel happy all the time. So those are tough. These are the kids that have to hear the word no, or else they continue to up the ante and ask for harder things. Oops, I keep flipping the slide. Okay, last one down here. This is the neglectful parenting. These are the kids I feel so sad for, too, because I think in one of my notes I even said, when I met a patient one time, she's like, I don't even know why I was born, because my parents spend no time with me. They don't care if I'm doing well or not in school, or if I make the team or they didn't make the team. And when she said that, it hurt. I could feel it. Why did they even have me? And her situation was interesting because it was like many affluent middle-class families, both parents worked. Why did they work? To provide. I gave her everything. And the dad came in one day when we needed intervention, and he said, why are you so sad? I've done everything to give you everything you wanted. So in his mind, him providing everything, whether it was lessons or material items, I don't remember exactly what it was, he was shocked, but in her mind, this was her reality. They're never there for me. Oh, she was left at home all the time, by herself, very lonely. And she was, I think I met her when she was in 7th grade. So low self-esteem, impulsive and aggressive, poor academics, and there's just researched outcomes of higher juvenile delinquency. They're left alone. So really, it's like, on one hand, I have the kid that I saw in clinic. On the other hand, you have the kids that are like, great, I'll do whatever I want. No one can tell me what to do. They're more likely to use drugs and alcohol. That usually starts with experimentation, but also it feeds that loneliness. And then when I'm not left by myself, at least I don't have to feel so lonely and rejected. So I think, let's see if I have anything else to add on that one. I'm going to go back to the indulgent and permissive parenting because I know this came out of this article. They tend to be self-centered, have difficulties controlling their impulses. Their social competence is usually low, and they're often characterized as immature, so we kind of covered that. They do, however, report relatively high levels of self-perception. What's that mean? That's fancy talk. Like, what's a high level of self-perception? You're toxic. And that's like, anything you say is offensive because I'm untouchable. I don't have to follow those rules. So they have a relatively high level of self-perception. On this side, just the things that I will add is these kids perform most poorly in all behavioral. Oh gosh, this is sad. They perform most poorly in all behavioral, emotional, and social domains. These children are the least sociable of all groups of children as they tend to be emotionally detached and have poor pro-social skills. These are the kids that like start arguments on the playground, and not all of them, but they're the ones that are usually the problem starters, and that comes from a place inside that's really sad and lonely, and they feel unloved and unwanted, and so they tend to act out more. Okay, so just wrapping it up, and then we'll do a time of question and answers, because I have joked before, but like this entire thing on parenting, it can't be covered in an hour, so I only picked one concept. On the bottom of your worksheet, maybe we can go over those really quick too, because I wanted to do check marks to encourage you to go for this. These are the things that are going to fall into the category of authoritative parents. These are the check marks. So actually, I'm going to go over that because we're a little early. You're going to accept your child as he or she is created, regardless of difficult temperament. Some kids are porcupines, and some kids are teddy bears. And God designed them that way. So when they're born and they're edgy and crabby and whiny, it's hard for us, but we got to remember that was God's design. And there's a great present wrapped up inside that little bundle. So we also have to model patience because love is patient. So instead of, this was one of those mistakes I made as a younger mom. My first kid was very edgy and whiny, and my second one was just happy. I kept wanting the grumpy one to be more sweet, and I wanted the happy one to, when he got older, to not be so emotional, like be more serious. So it was like I kept wanting to shape both of them, and I feel like this is one of those areas that I would have saved myself trouble if I would have said, you know what, I love the way God made you, and gone on with their little temper. High expectations and standards we've definitely talked about, but this is where we're going to have to lead by example. And I want to encourage you, these are not my standards, they're yours. You have to decide as a family what are your standards. Don't compare yourself with other families. If one family, they're very, very rigid with certain rules, that's because that's what works for their family, I guess, within the context of what they're doing. So we may not know, and then on other times, maybe we're more flexible. Maybe that's just what my husband and I have decided on something. So try to not compare yourself with other families, but as long as you have agreement and you have rationale, this is why we set the standard. This is why we care about it, and this is how we're going to communicate that. But we have to lead by example then. So we have to model our own values. And what did I say? When words match our actions. So kids are always watching. They hold us accountable. The next one says genuinely interested in the child's life, hobbies, personal interests, music, sports, etc. But this is where, I've seen so many parents. I have this, I won't say too much because current situation with a client. It's like, I just want to say to this person, can you just accept your child as weird and eccentric and out there as this child seems to look, I'm trying to not use he or she because I want to keep anonymity, but this kid deserves to be loved, as awkward as they are right now. Sorry, I'm really working hard on that. You get what I'm trying to say, though, okay? Like, just don't sweat the small stuff. They're going to outgrow it. And I hear this poor kid telling me how, I probably have already said, how she gets in trouble for everything. So I just want to tell this parent, like, lighten up. Give her a minute. She's going to do some quirky things, but she's going to remember all of this negative stuff in this season of her life. So it's starting to show up. So anyway, like their hobbies, you may not like them. She's not allowed to listen to certain music, and there's just always this critical thing of like, what are you watching? Oh my gosh, it's just like, hey, tell me about what you're watching. Why do you find interest in it? Tell me about it. Just be open to hearing why do they like what they like. You might learn something. Open to seeing their perspective. It's really humbling to be a parent and find out that our kids actually may have some cool insight on something. So hopefully that's something that you're open to see. Encouraging, understanding, and connected. Know what's going on in their life and ask questions. I heard somebody say kids hide in the room because they don't want anyone to ask them questions. I was like, that's so sad, because they've gotten accustomed to being maybe interrogated. Don't interrogate. Like, I'm so curious. Tell me more about that. Oh, I've never heard of that. So what is this thing? I mean, all sorts of fashion is changing so quickly, and the words are changing in our culture. My kids were just using other phrases recently, and we were laughing because I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying right now. But it was just funny. So yeah, know what's going on in their life, ask them questions. Focus on the character attributes. If you're going to have super high standards, have a reason for that, and then let go of the little things. If keeping your child's room clean, I was going to write this. I think I wrote it over here. If having a clean room, I don't know why, I always want to just mention this. If that is a deal breaker in your house, then as my parents would say, then that's the hill you're going to die on. Like, are you really going to die on that hill? You know what I'm saying? But in our house, for example, we have to have clean community spaces, so you can't just leave your shoes and your backpack all over. But in your room, I've given my kids autonomy to have a mess. I don't care, as long as it doesn't seep into the hallway and I have to look at it all the time. But you have to decide your own rules in your house. So again, not my rules to tell you, but I think, and I've heard research, that children are going to try to rebel in some form. Give them an easy form to rebel. Oh my gosh, this room is a disaster. Like, that's their space. That's where they have autonomy. That's, maybe it's their hairstyle. Maybe it's their clothing that they wear. But if you are rigid about every single thing they're doing, pretty soon they're going to find a different way to rebel. And those are the secret things. Those are the things they figure out how to be deceptive if we're like on them about everything. Give them a minute to just have their own individual personality. It says at the bottom here, last check mark, proud, positive, and protective. I'm really proud of you, but always say why. If you use plastic phrases like, you're awesome, you're so amazing, that actually becomes like trite, and it's meaningless after a while. So say something like, I'm really proud of you because you tried something hard, and look at you did it. That was amazing. When my kids got up in front of everybody today, and I was like, look at you got up in front of all those people. That's amazing. So be proud, but have a specific way to relate why. And that shows up in a lot of places. So attaboys and attagirls, those are all really, really positive, but just be intentional about why. I'm going to go to the X's, and then we can have some questions. Don't be easily annoyed, critical, and disinterested. This is all from the other 3 sections. This is a combination of those black squares of what you don't want to do if you don't want those outcomes. Don't compare your kids to anybody. God made them individually. Especially don't compare to siblings. That's one of the hardest things that kids have grown up feeling like they'll never be enough because this kid is very successful and gets a lot of praise. I don't play sports. I don't play a musical instrument. Be very intentional about seeing the neat attributes that they all have, but don't compare. Try to avoid harsh punishment. Punishment is important for reasons. We have to have rules. There are consequences. The Bible talks about that in Deuteronomy 28, that obedience brings blessings and disobedience brings consequences. So that's a clearly stated rule with authoritative parenting. This isn't a free-for-all, but the harshness is what we're going to avoid. So punishment and consequences, they have to happen. Just clearly communicate the boundaries. This is a caution, too. I actually have a couple more things I was going to add. When punishment is very punitive, kids just, like unintentionally, right, they just get this wiring that when I obey, I'm loved, and when I disobey, I'm harshly punished, which means I'm unloved. That's how they can feel. So if you verbally tell a child, I love you, and I'm harshly punishing you because I love you, that's not going to compute in their brain. So remember that the Bible says, Jesus himself said, if you love me, you will obey me, not if you obey me, then I'll love you. So obedience is part of that outflow of automatically being in a love relationship, and our kids want to obey us. And so when we turn this into this harsh punishment because you disobeyed and therefore clearly stated boundaries, I'm really sorry that you made this decision. It is such a bummer because I really wanted you to be able to go out with your friends, but since you did this thing after we talked about it, I'm not going to be able to let you go out. Those consequences are realistic, right? We go out in the world, and we have to understand that if you don't show up for work, you're not going to have a job. Or if you don't pay your bills, your water's going to get turned off. So consequences are something that we have to train them in this. The other thing that I really want to point out is in this category of no, never hearing the word no. And sorry, I really want to get this in here because I have been just heartbroken to see in families where there's no boundaries. There's just, the kid never hears the word no, or they're not allowed to say no. So in a correct context, if a kid is not allowed to say, no, I don't feel like eating dinner with the family tonight. No, I don't feel like, dare I say, go to church, but like there are times like the kid's just not going to do something. And if we force their no to a yes, that teaches them that those people out there in the world, when they want to put pressure on our kid is going to be trained to say yes, even though I'm not comfortable going out with you, or I don't want to get in your car. I don't feel safe in this place. If I've been told I can't listen to that internal voice, then our kids will override that and they'll do the people-pleasing thing and say yes because they don't want to get in trouble. And that's woven into their brain. So that's probably also up at the top. Authoritarian parents, I'm not allowed to say no, I don't want to go, or I don't want to talk to you right now, or I don't feel like sitting next to you, I don't feel like hugging you. All of that stuff, when we force their no to a yes, we're telling their brain that the next time a person out in the world says, I want you to do this, they're not allowed to say no. So I've seen kids make horrible mistakes because deep down they didn't want somebody to be mad at them, or they just were like, I have to say yes to people. Okay, the last couple ones I put on the bottom, and I already read the first part, either impossible standards, which is no grace, or no expectations, no boundaries, no rules. Therefore, there's no wisdom. So we have to have wisdom. So I think that that's pretty much it. The summary page is just this: how we approach parenting can significantly shape the life trajectory of each child we raise. Andy Stanley is known as saying, just because you had a parent doesn't mean you know how to be a parent. And just because you were a child doesn't mean you know how to raise one. So all of us are on this learning curve, and I just want to encourage everyone, it's never too late to learn. That's why as the age that I'm at with 5 kids, I still want to read parenting books because I still want to see if I did something that I need to fix way back then, I'm willing to do it now. So reflect on any of those things that you've done and then do the repair work. Have conversations that are awkward and say, I used to really overreact. I was really critical. And I just want to tell you, I'm sorry about that. I should have been more patient and listened to you. Those are conversations that I've had. And then renew your relationship because God is all about restoring. So that's it for us now. I do have some time to answer questions, but a little bit of a quiet audience. So anyone have any questions? I do. Yay, Tracy has a question.
So I am just really grateful for the parents I had. But I happen to take my gift of good parenting and take the things that weren't so good and replicate them horribly in my experience with my children. Thank God he is graceful. Yeah. But when you see family patterns like that, Gretchen, what is the best way? I mean, I obviously was given grace through faith, but what is the best way to help try and break some of those family patterns? Because I really sense that there's a lot of this that I see in families that have children that are our age, that are kids' age, that are older and going into college, that we're like, how do we get out of these patterns? And we're done.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Is there a chance you can give me a little example of, because generational patterns are a really big deal.
Sure.
They're like, I mean, they can range from like the way we handle conflict, the way we don't even talk about conflict, the way we don't talk about emotions, or, I mean, is there an example?
Yeah, so like one of the things that I see a lot in parenting is a blend of that, those 4 parenting styles. So especially in high profile families where you have a high profile, so you have a very high standard, and you may have a warmth that looks warm, but then when you come inside, now all of a sudden you have this like permissive, or, you know, and it feels like a mental health issue. So now you have like almost a child that's like bipolar feeling in how they're acting as they're growing up, because they're just not certain. Like I've got mixed messages. So I've seen that in several instances, along with the fact that now we're seeing mental health issues.
Yeah.
And then also the social seclusion.
With COVID.
You know,
Yeah.
or just in
Isolation.
general, because now maybe I'm a parent with a child with learning disabilities, and they're already anxietous, and then who knows what my parenting style did to help or hurt that?
Yeah, that's a big question. Hopefully, it might be an entire different hour. But I'm thinking, the first thing that I heard when you said high profile, I feel like there is I don't know if I could put my finger on the right word, but there's a presentation that I think all of us really want to have out in public, that especially if people know who we are, we want our kids to look nice, behave, well-dressed, look the part. And I do feel like that can cross into, you need to represent me well, and if you don't, there'll be problems later. But then there's also just that integrity of like, this is my family, this is who we really are, and we don't have to worry about that image. But image, I think, is what you're saying with, you said high profile. It can go from one extreme to the next, because the anxiety for having to be perfect on the outside when really we have this mess that we're trying to hide, then permissive on the flip side of that, of like, okay, let me just buy you whatever. Can you imagine being a kid in that environment where I'm like, I don't know which is right or wrong? So that's what drives anxiety. Anxiety is the idea, or generally, because there are a couple different categories, but in this case, it's the anticipated threat of something happening. So it's basically like the future idea. Depression is like what happened back here. A lot of times anxiety is like what might happen in the future. So if what might happen in the future is I'm going to get in trouble if I step out of line, or I'm going to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, not look the part, that puts me on edge. Now I've got to walk on eggshells because something might not go well, and then I'm going to get in trouble for it. And it's this weird undertone of like, I'm one step from being in trouble. And that's what drives a lot of that anxiety with these kids, versus like, I mean, the family pictures that look real, you know? Like somebody's hair is crazy and somebody else wanted to wear that outfit and was going to pitch a fit if they didn't have that pair of shoes and that dress on or whatever. Who cares, right? So I feel like the more authentic we are, the more kind of respect people have. Like everybody's got stuff going on. That's a good question.
Hey, so this is probably another question that could be a whole seminar, but I would appreciate maybe just kind of your, top 2 or 3 high-level observations on the kind of social media generation. I have a lot of disoriented conversations with parents that, I have to have my kid, 4th grade, 5th grade. They have to have a phone because I just have to know, keep in touch. They, but they're abusing it. And parental controls are obviously a part of that answer, but, we're seeing a lot of behaviors, awarenesses of things that are very adult themes. I didn't, I've been doing what I do. I'm, the principal of this school for a lot of years. And I will say even 10 years ago, the grade level awareness of adult themes has probably jumped down about 4 grades since when I started doing this work, maybe even 5. and that's very disorienting, especially to parents that are kind of the generation, like the pre-cell phone generation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a couple of observations or maybe stories of
really
that
good
can
point.
shed some light on this approaching those things.
I will admit that I actually am probably not a good person to ask about that because I'm getting more training myself. There's a seminar coming up called Gospel Tech, and I'm going to it. It's a 2-part seminar. It's going to be at a different church location, and I registered for it. It's free. So not to plug that, but I don't even know. Because I get asked that a lot. There's research only now that's starting to come out about the negative aspect of the comparisons. That's one huge thing with the social media. The images, the algorithms that are sending specific images to your kids, they're actually tailored for them. So then there's this heuristic, basically like the world must be about this, but it's really myopic. It's like, this is the world because this is what gets fed to my media, my social media. The algorithm itself is detrimental because it literally like circles back on itself. My tech husband was explaining that to me, so I don't know if I could explain it, but it made sense. Like there's something called infinity scrolling now. I mean, there's no end to the bottom of the page, which is mind-blowing. So then we get into things like I'm interested with self-regulation. Do I really have to be scrolling and looking for, like, I lost track of my whole day because I had no idea. I have never had social media, and the reason was because I found it to be a platform for people to, can I say just puke out? Because it was just like this whole, like, people would just say stuff, and I was mystified. Why would you do that? Why would you say that? Why would you post pictures of things? So I don't even know what the effect of scrolling is on my own brain, but what I also know is kids now are coming to me asking for an ADHD diagnosis. But if you're thinking about neurologically, you fed them micro images so fast that their brain became accustomed to these. Thanks, Gianna, for nodding, my nurse friend back there. And yet, is that really diagnosable as an organic issue that these kids need to be medicated for? Or does their brain just have to sit still for a minute and, I don't know, like look out at nature? So it's multifaceted. Then we're talking about content. It's a sewage pipe. We told that to our kids. This is a sewage pipe. And then we have the part of like, as a parent, but I'm the one paying the bill and buying the phone. Like, what? What are we doing? And then my own opinion, which is not research-based, I'll tell you that, is I noticed that when we had these horrific events of school shootings happening, it made parents feel like the only way that my kid is safe is if I hand them a phone so I know where they're at all times. Baseball practice ends, I know like I can communicate. So I feel like we kind of as a society got tucked into handing phones to our kids, but now the access that they have, we have to manage it. So out of 5 kids, I have 2 adults that we've had to go through lots of these conversations. There was content that was mind-boggling, and so what's a good word? Like as a mom, I was so distraught that I couldn't have like filtered that because I didn't even know it was out there. But it opens up conversations, and maybe I'll just kind of go back to that because I want to be able to answer your question concisely. When we have relationships, face-to-face relationships with our kids, they tell us stuff. You can pick up on the change of their demeanor. I had one of my kids getting into some very, very scary things, but I watched this one's demeanor change. So what's going on? And then I started looking at some of the content, and I was able to get in and get involved quickly. But see, I got to wrap this up. But also, I look at society. We go out to dinner, and a adult hands a tablet to a kid so that they can enjoy a quiet dinner. I'm like, we've got to take responsibility. So if you want your kid to be fed all that, then hand them a tablet at all times. But if you want to say, hey, it's useful, I said this, I keep looking at you, Craig, sorry. But I've said to my kids, it's a useful tool, but just like a hammer is a useful tool, let's use it when it's appropriate, but we don't need it all the time. It's silly. So I just have my own thoughts about it. We have phones to communicate with each other. They check the internet for specific things like what time things start or whatever, and very limited social media.
A little to that, just because I did research on this as well.
Yay, thank you.
So current research would show that most children at age 8 is the first exposure to adult content. 8. So adulting process starts at age 8, where it used to be 14, 15. Once they hit puberty, and it's actually lasting much longer, so people aren't actually becoming self-sufficient adults until about 30 on average. So the adulting process has tripled in time, which has caused a whole plethora of complicated things. One of the things I think that's important from all this is recognizing it's there, recognizing they can hide it from you. They're smarter than you. It doesn't take very long to figure out that with most kids and phones. Technology is just what it is. The growth of all this is from smartphones. That is generally where it's derived from, because they can hide everything on there if they know what they're doing, and if they don't know, their friend knows. So it's something we as parents just have to be aware of, have to be mindful of and respectful of, and recognize the dangers there and have those conversations in appropriate timings to make sure and prep them and help them through it, and try and be aware enough to recognize the signs when it does show up, because it's likely going to at some point if they're living in this world. So that's a little bit on the exposure to that stuff. It is dropping. When I was reading 8 years, and some suggest it's now as low as even 6, which I have a hard time even swallowing that. I did not know those things existed at 6 and 8. So it's a different world. So it's a challenge, but it's something we have to address and just be cognizant of and be mindful of as you make those decisions for your family.
Yeah, can I add something really quick?
Yes.
As you're talking, I'm remembering in Ecclesiastes, it says there's nothing new under the sun. So it's just a different form, I think, of the enemy trying to get to our kids. But relationship and being proactive and sitting with them and having eye contact and sitting through boring conversations, I mean, really, that's how relationship gets formed. So while there is this feeling of discouragement, like, oh, what's happening? This is new. It's not new. It didn't surprise God. He knew all of this was going to happen. And then he's equipping us as parents to have hard conversations with them. And if necessary, remove the device. But, I mean, I have threatened that, and I don't know if that was a good measure, because then they find a different way around it. But then let's ask why. Why do we need it so bad?
Well, and I think it comes back to, as you said, the authoritative approach, where you know what's going on in their lives. You have the high standards, but you hold them yourselves, and you're involved with them so that when these questions and things start coming up, you're aware of it so that you can speak into that. And sometimes I think some of those topics we avoid like the plague because they're uncomfortable.
They're uncomfortable.
I had to realize, I know if you don't tell your kids, someone else probably will. And it'll happen sooner than you think. So we have to be mindful of doing that.
Amen.
Yeah, let me add something else also from the youth perspective. There is a new problem coming up. It's related to social media somehow, which is that in average, more than 50% of single people in the United States are not looking to connect with another human being anymore. Some of the reasons are social media, because the expectations they have are so unrealistic that they cannot find someone to match those expectations in the real world, and they prefer to stay alone. 50 years ago, that was 20%. Now it's more than 50.
Yeah.
And I have done in some events with young people, because in order to connect with another person, they need to leave their phone aside. Or they get the idea, oh, I'm connected with everybody through my phone. But the reality in statistic is that they are more isolated than ever before.
Right. Right. Social media has shown that kids are more isolated, even though they have friends. So yeah, good point. It's a tough subject, but we're right on the beginning of it as parents. I mean, none of us really, I can tell, we didn't have these growing up. I was so thankful, really, but unfortunately, this is the reality that we have right now. So let's equip ourselves. Last question.
Just a comment on the same topic. One thing, I work in law enforcement, so I deal with a lot of kid problems, and a big theme that comes around is kind of the monkey see, monkey do. If you don't want your children to use profanity in your home, are you using profanity?
Right. Thank you for bringing that one up. That was on my list.
If you have this pervasive, inappropriate topic that's coming up with your small children, what type of media are you consuming as an adult in your home with your children around, with the language, with the topics?
Yeah.
You have to make a concerted effort as the adult to eliminate those things from your life so they don't influence your children.
I love that. Thank you for adding that. There's so much in this topic that I wanted to cover, but that specifically was on my list that I didn't, so thank you. Because I hear kids getting in tons of trouble for what they see and what they say, and then you realize like the parents are hiding stuff and looking at stuff and saying the same profanity, and I'm like, yeah, same expectation.
Yeah, I have a question about empathy.
Okay.
Is it something that I should not expect from a 4, 5, 6-year-old, or is something that we should try to, like, which one of these 4 parenting types would nourish empathy? Because I observe no empathy when a sibling or a parent is in pain, or you know, is that normal for kids, young kids?
Good question. I would need to know a little bit more of the context, but I'm wondering what is special to that child. Is there something that is some type of connection, and can they at least elicit the feeling of empathy, and maybe start with that? But it's tough when you're not seeing that. It's kind of scary, but I think too it's modeled and it's seen, like it's felt. So if there's, you know, an injury, there's, are you okay? That looks like it hurts. That sounds stressful. Oh no, it looks like you're struggling. And boy, I know that when I struggle, I need extra help too. It's just the language and the behaviors. But we can say something to add to that, Craig?
Yeah, in terms of developmental psychology, and you're looking at the developmental of adolescent brains, the empathy is a little bit more of an abstract behavior. And abstractions start around the third to fourth grade level. Up until then, there's a lot of parallel play. There really is not a lot of empathy in kindergarten, first, second grade, because it's still a very concrete, this is mine, you know, sharing is being taught, and those lessons are hard and they're taking forever. But the abstraction of empathy is really kind of like that middle school where you see, you know, somebody falls on the playground and they rush over to help. You know, some of the buddies rush over to help. So that, I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I
at all.
was thinking that you were talking about an age like 5, but were you thinking about a different age, maybe? Yeah, that's why I was wondering if it's pretty little. It'll learn. So my dad is turning 75 today, so we're going out to dinner in a minute. So I have time for about one more question, and then we're gonna go take my dad out for his 75th birthday. So
Draw that boundary.
yes,
One
hard
more.
stop.
One more and you're done. Who gets the last word?
Oh, wonderful! Thank you.
I would say that I too don't do anything on social media. I missed the boat on that one.
You missed it, really? You missed the boat on not having social media when you were younger? Aren't you glad you don't have 1,000 pictures of yourself? Everything's stored somewhere.
Everything you've eaten.
I'm glad that, yeah, everything I ate and all the dumb things I did, I'm glad there's not a photo to prove any of that right now.
I never thought it would be something you should share.
Exactly, yeah. The need to be seen, though, right? These kids have a need to be seen. So just like what you said, in the same parallel, if we don't talk to them, someone else will. But if they don't feel seen by us, they'll try to feel seen by someone else. And those are not good people.
So we want to respect your time. If any of you want her card, we have some cards back there on the back. You can reach out to her. In addition, both Pastor Ryan up in the PA booth right now and myself are authorized. So the Prepare Enrich program that we did for the whole church here, they have a parental version where it will literally look at each parent with each child. There is a cost they charge for it, but we're happy to help with those as well. If you really want to dive deeper, we want to be here to help and support. That's part of our goal, and so we're really grateful that Gretchen could be here and help us. And so if you wouldn't mind, let's pray a blessing over her as she goes and celebrates her father's birthday as we go.
Thank you.
Father in heaven, thank you so much for this time we could spend learning a little bit more about how to be better at parenting. And Lord, forgive us for the times and help us to forgive ourselves where we didn't do it all right. But Lord, help us to just be open-minded, resilient, and continue to learn how to be better and grow and make those assessments of our own lives and make the wrongs we've done right as best we can with your truth and your grace. And may you just bless us as we go through this very challenging aspect of life and parenting. And we pray, Lord, that you would just bless each one that is here. May they go forward from here with your grace, and be with Gretchen as she goes and spends a wonderful dinner with her father. May it be a wonderful time, and we just want to pray a blessing upon her for blessing us this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. All right.
Oh, I had one last comment at the
Oh,
bottom of your worksheet. Nope, just there's a quick video. If you wanted to get a recap of this, I've already done a video on this, and I posted it. So at the very bottom, that's in your footnote. So you can log on and see that. That's it.
Okay. God bless.
Thank you.